Are we on? Ready? That's it.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to the Big Love Summit. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you today, to see so many. And I'd just like to share the inspiration for Big Love. Our idea was, how do we embody big love for ourselves? And how do we embody it for our community and also for our world? And what possible obstacles exist for that? So we chose themes we thought would help that vision, which was love and presence, compassion and connection, joy and gratitude, and equanimity, in the sense that we're all one big human family. And today's session is inspired by the first theme, love and presence. We're going to have sessions throughout the next 6 days, and you're very welcome to join those. I believe it's the same Zoom link for all of the different sessions. Today's session is going to be moderated by Wendy Ridley, who's been serving as a member of the FDCW Board of Trustees for many, many years now. And I'm now going to hand over to Wendy. Thank you. Wendy's on mute.
Thank you, Victoria. Welcome everyone to this first session of the Big Love Summit, Paula Chichester's session on love, presence and embodiment. A little bit about Paula. From a young age, Paula was passionate about the environment, and she moved from studying the ecology of our planet into studying the ecology of our minds. And inspired by Lama Thubten Yeshi, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and Lama Zopa, she carefully followed their advice and has been on a journey of study and retreats for over 40 years. Paula chose many years in solitude, including long retreats of 3 and 4 years duration. I remember reading about Paula's long retreats in Mandala, the FPMT magazine, and I was in awe that a Californian woman could be so renounced as to endure the ancient techniques of yogis and aspire to first-hand realizations. I rejoice in Paula's warm heart, her wisdom, her renunciation, including all those basic conditions and hardships that she endured mentally and physically during those long retreats. In the last 14 years, Paula has traveled internationally, giving talks, leading meditations and retreats. Her style is very universal education, embodied with lots of movement and interactive. She's very generous in sharing her wisdom, and that makes retreats with Paula full of love, full of joy, full of clarity and authenticity.
My goodness.
I encourage any of you with any questions throughout this session to put them in the chat so that we can interact directly with you. So FDCW is privileged to host the wonderful inspiration that is Paula. Over to you, Paula. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I feel really embarrassed by that introduction. I'm not sure where to start, but we just better start. So yeah, I just thank all of you and Victoria, and I know Wendy's been working with universal education for as long as I can remember, which is I think we all know what it is, teaching kindness, love, compassion, wisdom in a secular format for all people to embrace and embody. So Victoria asked me to give this talk on embodiment. I've made it embodiment, love, and presence, having presence coming last. And I'm going to talk about each one individually, and hopefully I can do it all in 45 minutes now. and then have a few little exercises that you can try and do and see as a way to begin. And so I just thought I would just start with a little bit of a introduction about why we would want to incorporate embodiment, love, and presence into our daily life, into our experience. And there's two reasons, of course, for ourselves and for others. And I was thinking about it this morning, and I thought, there's this concept that's, I'm not sure how it's labeled, but it's the way I would label it is altruistic self-care. And because we live in a really, as we all know, I don't have to talk about the stress of the world today with the environment and the wars and the economics and the children, and it's a bit overwhelming for everyone. And so this is when self-care becomes even more important than ever before. And self-care doesn't have to be for myself alone. We understand that by taking care of ourselves, it allows us to be available to others in a way that's meaningful and doesn't burn us out. And it helps us to develop healthy boundaries and authentic communication with ourselves and others, which is really important today. So many of us are caregivers that care too much, and then there's a whole world out there that's all about just me and me and me, So we need to create a balance with that. And I think we all know that. I know that's why you're here, so I don't need to say more about that. And I've, in the last couple of years, I've been very interested in what's happening in the world of neurobiology and psychology, because we're finding a lot of really helpful science to authenticate what we have been studying in our spiritual traditions for millennium. And one of them is this idea of neurobiology. And I would just like to show my gratitude to the people I've been learning from. In case you're also interested in learning about neuroception and healing ourselves, there's a wonderful American psychologist named Deb Donna. And of course, I think most of us now know about Gabor Mate. And my friend Yeshi Palmo has been very helpful. She's a wonderful teacher. And there's just so much in the world now, like Dan Siegel and many other. Betsy Politan is very popular somatics teacher that helps us become embodied. And with these aids, along with our own, what we've learned from the past people who've involved that are studied Buddhism, what's so fascinating is finding science. I guess the word is authenticate and show that what the Buddha taught long time ago does actually transform our neurobiology. And I find that really fascinating because I started out as a scientist and knew that this was science, but I wasn't the person who went off and did the research. So I'm really grateful to all the people who've done the research. And I'd just like to share a little bit with you about the importance of embodiment to start with, because we have what they call now neurobiology and neuroception. And we have our nervous system is with our whole body. And of course, the Buddhists have taught for years that our mind is all throughout our body, that our mind rides on winds and winds pervade our body. And this is now what we understand, that we are constantly communicating with our environment. And there's two main things that our nervous system is programmed to do constantly, and it's happening all the time within our checking in within ourselves and what's going on in the room or the world around us. And the two things that our nervous system is doing, that, and of course our nervous system is in our whole body, is we're looking for safety and we're looking for connection. And anytime, if you study any trauma healing or any type of embodiment practices, and even the capacity for love and giving and compassion, we need this ground state, this platform, or this beginning experience of safety and connectivity. And of course, you can see in the world today that people are feeling less and less and less safe. And as people feel less and less safe, they're less and less embodied. And when we don't feel our bodies, it's a lot harder for us to feel this love and compassion, and also to be aware of what's happening in our minds. And of course, that's where the presence comes in later. Because when we can be embodied, then that allows us to generate love. And once we have this sense of love within ourselves, then we can be present and available to be aware of what we're saying and what we're doing and how we affect people. And on an unconscious level, everybody around us can feel safe and connected when we feel safe and connected, because that is what our bodies are constantly doing. This is what we're always, looking for it. So you can see then, if we can learn to feel safe and connected with our own selves, then everybody we meet and everybody that we work with, and I suppose it works on Zoom too, we allow them to be relaxed and feel safe, which allows them to be connected, which then allows them to be in their more interactive, aware state. And so this brings us a little bit to Stephen Porges and the polyvagal theory, which maybe you have heard of. And if you're interested in it, there's a very good, psychologist Deb Donna has put it in language we can all understand. But basically, our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, is constantly looking, safety, connectivity. And when we don't feel safe, the vagus nerve, we move into our lower connectivity with the vagus nerve, where we are either in our sympathetic state, where we're in fight or flight, as you all know. I mean, most of you know this now. Or we go into just a freeze, which is a state that we're just not even connected to ourselves, and we're not connected to anything. We just go into this dull state. And we can still operate that way, and a lot of people do. A lot of people are just disconnected with their inner feelings and their bodies, and so they're always looking for some way to feel connected. And so then we fall prey to the advertising world that you'll feel good and you feel connected if you buy this or do that. And so that directly is harming our planet. And disconnected people have very difficult time feeling connected to their children. Compassionate people, we just don't, there's no empathy when we're disconnected. And we kind of have almost a epidemic of that these days. And so what we can do with these embodiment and loving practices is reconnect the vagus nerve. So we're back up what they call the ventral state, which is where we can feel connected and safe. And then we have access to our hearts and our wisdom and our care and our ability to respond, our ability to listen, without being everything coming through this filter of fear. And we can see in the world today, there's just so much fear, and fear causes people to make decisions that are based on their own personal safety instead of something that's altruistic and could be helpful to others. And so there, then, this idea of embodiment becomes important, because as we learn to connect and feel our body feelings, this neuroception is the new word they call it, instead of perception, neuroception, which is working, beginning to understand how our own nervous system works, so that we can feel when we go from our calm, aware, loving, responsive, resonating ability to be with others and with ourselves into these sympathetic fear, flight, frozen states of mind. And so I mean, there's a whole battery now of information about this, and you can take courses, and Betsy Politan is one of the teachers. And then there's, for years, Feldenkrais has been around, and yoga really helps, of course. And but I'm just going to show you one very simple exercise that's a somatic exercise that helps us come into our bodies and begin to feel safe. And it's called orienting. And I think I first learned about this in a workshop with Gabor Mate and Betsy Politan. And what you do is, and you can do it with me, because I think all of us here are here because we want the world to be a safer, more loving place, and to create inner and outer environments where people can become their highest, best self, and create a culture of compassion and love and wisdom and understanding and altruistic intention. So if we can if we can be in our bodies, it helps a lot. So so what we're going to do is we're just going to look forward, and then we're going to just slowly, and I'll explain why after we do it. We're just going to slowly turn our heads to the right, just very slowly with your eyes open, just scanning the room. And just go as far as is comfortable, and then come back slowly, slowly with your eyes. It's important to let your eyes connect with everything that's in the room in a relaxed way. Almost like you're not really looking, you're just letting your eyes see without necessarily perceiving, there's a window, there's a pillow, just letting the shapes and colors that come to the mind come without labeling them. Of course, I mean, just don't think about it, just do it. And we'll do it back the other direction, slowly, slowly. And as you do it, just pay attention to your body and your breathing. We'll do it one more time. And let the eyes just move with the head. And we'll go one more time. And then slowly come back to the center where we're all looking at each other. In fact, I want the gallery view. That's better. And then just sit still and breathe. And just notice how you feel. I know I'm not nervous anymore. I can feel that. And what that does is it resets the vagus nerve. And if we do that, then we're able to pay more attention to our breathing. And just feel the breathing coming in the body. And imagine that the exhale goes down to the base of your spine. And from there, the exhale goes into the earth. So we have, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the concept of grounding. So as we breathe quietly, then we can imagine a human figure. Well, first, let's imagine an environment that makes us feel safe and happy and protected. It could be someplace by the sea. It could be our bedroom. It could be anywhere that feels comfortable, where you feel comfortable. It might be right where you are. And then imagine in front of you, facing you, is a human figure that you know loves you. It can be your mother, your father, your best friend, a Buddha, Christ, whatever, whatever is your, maybe it's if you're a musician, it's a great musician that you love, or some kind of sense of some safety that could come by being in the presence of this person. And then you can say to yourself, as I breathe in, I feel safe. And as I breathe out, I relax. And imagine feeling that warm, loving care as you breathe in and through your body. And it lights up all the cells in your body. And imagine that your breath, with the exhale, is filling up your body, your arms and your legs and your head with this felt sense of protection and care. You see, the other thing scientists have shown that when we think about something, a person, a place, and the receptors in the part of the brain that lights up when they do the scans is exactly the same as if you're actually there. So, you know, if you visualize you're in the presence of your teacher, your mother, the one who loves you, and allow yourself a little bit of time and space to do that with your breathing. And if it helps you to think to yourself, as I breathe in, I feel safe. I breathe out, I relax. Then do that. And I encourage you to try this for longer periods of time on your own. We need to move along because we have to finish in a few minutes. So once you can work on this lying down, you can embellish it, make it however you want to make it. But the idea is to just communicate with your nervous system that I'm safe and I'm relaxed. And then the other factor, besides safety, for us to abide in our altruistic part of our brain, our compassion part of our brain, our reasoning brain, is to feel connected. So to do that, we remember all the people that we love, especially all the people for whom we feel grateful. And we surround ourselves with them. So you can just imagine that. And bring to mind what it feels like to remember those people, what that gratitude feels like, what that love feels like, what that care feels like. And it may only be one person, or it may be your pet, or it may be, but I'm sure we all have some person that in our lives that helps us, that makes us feel like we're connected to some, maybe it's people on your Facebook page, whatever it is, you know, just people. And then we'll start another exercise from somatic healing. It's called resourcing. And probably some of you know about all this already. But what we do then is, without losing that feeling of being kind of safety, if that's possible. Of course, all this takes a bit of practice. You might not feel it the very first time around. But then we imagine that our whole body, because this is where all our neuroreceptors are, and that our whole body is like a dried up sponge. And as we breathe in, we can breathe in through all the pores of our body and imagine that this moisture of love and care from the people we've surrounded ourselves with is coming in and filling up our entire body so that we become wetter and wetter, like a sponge would become, you know, or cloth, whatever, however that works in wherever you live. Yeah. And so as you breathe in, you allow yourself to feel that connectivity. And as you breathe out, you remember your gratitude and your love for those beings. Or we remember our gratitude and love for those beings. And feel it coming into our whole body. It might be easier to do this lying down. And in the beginning, it is imagination. Everything starts in imagination. But once the neural pathways become more familiar to the brain and the nervous system, then the feelings begin to pour in. That feeling of safety and connectedness. Sometimes it helps to put a little smile on your face, remembering the people that give you joy. Maybe it's the music that brings you joy. You can also add to that if you want to. You can put one hand on your heart and one hand on your head, the top of your head. So in the beginning, we use our mind to think of concepts, like this person and that person, and I love this person for this reason or for that reason. But after the feeling you start to feel it, then you just relax and let it happen. So we don't have to be using our verbal part of our brain, just feeling the body. And bringing your awareness to your feet and your hands and your legs, and just imagining that your body, that all the pores of your body can receive this love. And once we have established our safety and our connectedness, then presence is just naturally there. We are present because we're in our bodies. We've come into our ventral state of neuroception. And then the final step of this, what I'm calling altruistic self-care, is to just let yourself, just take 5 minutes to just let yourself be. And cultivate an inner landscape of non-judgmental care. So the same way you might pick up an infant when they're crying and hold them and cuddle them and soothe them, we can create that inner world for ourselves. It happens naturally when we do the other things we've talked about. And when you recognize a judgmental thought or a sense of shame or a sense of guilt or maybe resentment for somebody else, we don't push it away. We don't say, oh, this is a bad thought, I can't have it. We just let it be there. And then remembering this experience of resourcing, that we just breathe in this sense of space and love, and just let the two things be there. We can learn to reframe situations, which would be another whole, topic. So we won't go into that. But, through psychology, and especially trauma work of people like Peter Levine and Gabor Mate, and we can learn to reframe these situations, which is where the compassion comes in. Because sometimes just sitting and being with it isn't enough, and we need to talk to ourselves a little bit. But the first step before we can begin any kind of analysis is to make sure that we are in touch with the hurt part of ourselves and allow that to be there. We don't have to censor it and say, oh, I'm not allowed to have that feeling. Because we have to invite everyone to the table. All of our voices have to be heard. All of our hurts need to be healed. So it's very important to create this inner landscape of love and acceptance. And that's helpful when we do these first two ideas of, or feelings of, safety and connectivity. Because when we understand our own motivations and our own actions, we realize that when we do things that hurt others, when we make mistakes, it's most of the time, almost all the time, it's just because we're looking for happiness. And that is an act of self-love. Looking for happiness is loving ourselves. And so rather than rejecting the way we've gone about loving ourselves, because what we've learned, we can embrace it. And as we begin to embrace that, then we can understand that when people do things that we see harmful or hurtful to ourselves or others, that they too are just looking for happiness. And so when we familiarize ourselves enough with making space for ourselves and our own mistakes, and imbue that with this love that comes from allowing ourselves to feel connected and connected to ourselves and to all other beings, then it allows us to stop being victims and blaming, and just understand that we're all human beings and we're all just looking for happiness. And it gives us a different frame in which to move through the world. Because the other thing that I heard a report from a scientist just the other day on the radio, everything comes from the mind. And how long have we been hearing that, Everything comes from the mind. What that means is we have the potential to reframe and re-educate ourselves so that these stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves can be retold. And the ways that we limit ourselves, and the way that we limit our compassion, the way we limit our love, can be changed. We've all heard this term, neuroplasticity. Our brains are changeable the entire adult human life. And I just find that doing these simple, really simple exercises like this can be so helpful when we do it with the intention of creating an inner space, an inner world where love is present and we can be in our bodies. And then that allows us to be present for others. And here now there's a word called resonance. Resonance is when we allow ourselves to be present with where we are. And when we listen to other people, we really listen. We don't need to be thinking ahead of what I'm going to say next. We don't need to be thinking about how I can help this person. We don't need to tell that person how we can help this person. What we want to do is just listen to that person and allow them to feel, because our neuroceptivity is going on all the time, right? So if we let ourselves be present and be loving, and we can sit with other people and be like that, then they come into that space themselves. So our minds are much bigger and vaster than what our thoughts tell ourselves. You know, we're not our thoughts, we're not our feelings. And so by doing these simple practices of embodiment and love, we can begin to come in touch with a bigger sense of self that is spacious and in the nature of love. And just as we're told on the airplane to put the oxygen mask on myself before my children, or just as if we're walking around and we have a stone in our shoe, we stop to take the stone out of our shoe, then if we take a little time in the morning, preferably before we get out of bed, to just check in with ourselves, you know, like what's going on with me? And use these resources of letting myself feel loved because I am, and safe. And even if I'm not in a safe situation, we can still, as best as we can, be in our bodies and be in our hearts and learn to notice how, because each person has their own formula for how we respond to stress and fear and go into our sympathetic fight or flight. And these are patterns we learned as children to survive our childhood. But we don't have to be stuck in those things. And the more we can create an inner world where all the voices can come out and be heard, then we begin to and respond to that as we would respond to any child or any person in pain, but we give that to ourselves. And we can, then those tendencies to go into our fight or flight become over time less and less. And if we have really intense traumas, then we need extra help. And there's a lot of therapy around today to help with trauma. It's amazing. You know, there's EMDR and emotional freedom technique and lots of people. I mean, I love listening to Gabor Mate on the, you know, on the YouTubes, but you know, seek out a therapist that can help you if you need that. And because we all have different histories. But the one thing that we need to know is that the way that we adapted to our childhoods and what created our personality was a child needing safety and connectivity, because that is the base nature of our nervous system. So when a child doesn't feel safe, or because you can feel safe and still not connected because you might have a mother who's not connected to her own feelings. And if a mother's not connected to her own feelings, then a child doesn't learn to recognize their feelings And so we grow up, myself included, not being aware of what we feel when we feel. And so that's why these embodiment practices are so important, to learn to get in touch with what we really feel, so that then we're able to feel other people's situation and pain and listen and resonate and create a space where everybody's welcome. But our nature is to shut down and move away from it. And so when we look at the patterns that we developed as children, rather than seeing this as a negative thing that I need to pretend isn't there, I want to overpower, we have to see that with a great deal of love and understand that this is how I survived. You know, I became this person because this is what my parents wanted me to be. And so then as we get to be adults, then we have to go back and say, okay, well, what do I really feel? You know, how is my personality reflect the fact that I'm not being myself? Because our personalities are formed by behaving the way that a child will get that safety and that connectivity. So that's why these two words that are coming up in all psychology these days, everywhere you look, you know, it sounds so simple, and it is simple. However, we need to, I'm not saying we need to, but if we're interested in developing a culture where we are welcoming to all beings, where we have access to our love, we have access to our compassion, and it's not the kind that's coming from an authoritarian, you should be compassionate, but a genuine one, then we turn to these kind of practices. And so we just remember that we create our experience, and we can uncreate the world that we live in inside ourselves through creating this connectivity and safety. So there's just a few minutes left, and I think 5 minutes left. If anyone has a question or comment or criticism, that's fine, you know. So, yeah.
Paula, thank you. We didn't actually start, you know, until sort of we started about 10-15 minutes late, so yeah. Perhaps we can go on a bit longer if that's okay. Susie has a question in the chat asking, is there a specific name for this type of meditation? Feels like reverse yet beneficial tongue len.
I don't know, I made it up.
Thank you. I mean, you called them, you know, altruistic self-care, embodiment.
Yeah, you could call it that, altruistic. I just came up with that title this morning. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Any other questions, please either raise your hand by going to the button that says reactions and at the bottom of the screen and pressing raised hands, or write it in chat. There's lots of thank yous. Okay, here's one from Magda. What kind of practices or tools are suitable for people who are in constant stress, who never have a break, or someone who lives in an environment of constant trauma and deprivation, or who has no support system, keeping in mind that these people probably have hardly any time for themselves?
Yeah, that's really a tough question, and I really don't know the answer to it, especially if they don't have time to themselves. You know, but if they can take just a little bit of time and remember the people that have been kind to them, and can remember anything that brings gratitude to the mind, because gratitude seems to heal any kind of resentment and anger and fear. And I think the greatest tragedy of the world today is that so many people are in that situation. But the one thing that I've learned about trauma healing is that you can be in a very dangerous, what would be a traumatic situation. But as long as there's someone to share it with you and to listen to you, you don't get traumatized. So if those people that you're talking about, I guess that's Maida, then if they just have somebody to share their feelings with, you know, you notice women talk all the time, you know, because they're sharing their feelings. And it's not a bad thing, because in sharing feelings, we're not burdened by them anymore. You know, we're offering them up. And if they have no one to share them with, then maybe they can share them with Buddha or Christ or somebody, or there's, you know, I don't really know, but I know that sharing the feeling that you have and the desperation that you feel, and feeling that there's somebody there who will listen to you, makes all the difference in the world. And that's another reason why compassionate listening is so important, because when people are telling us their story, we don't want to try to fix them. We don't want to do anything. We just want to listen with an open heart and an open mind, and let them then, you know, download or whatever, however you want to say it, you know. And as long as we can be in touch with our own heart, and I would say our breathing, then we can listen with loving care and not let it overwhelm us. Because I remember a few weeks ago in Jamyang, I was asked the question, how do we not be overwhelmed? And I think this is how. If we can cultivate this sense of, I'm okay inside myself, which takes practice. You know, in the beginning, we don't feel safe inside ourselves because we have to go back and heal all the times that we didn't feel safe. So this isn't something that's going to come in one session. It's a practice, you know, but even if we just do it for 10 minutes before we get out of bed and remember when we go to sleep at night, it's so, so helpful, particularly if we connect it with our breathing. That's the most important aspect, because we're always breathing. And so we always have an opportunity when we're not quite so busy. You know, maybe we're waiting for a bus, maybe we're cooking dinner, maybe we're, you know, in the grocery store. But if we can spend a little bit of time doing this and really bring it into our body and feeling our whole body, then we can access that at any time. And that's the beauty of breath work. And, you know, the Dalai Lama said that we feel love with our whole bodies. And so this is why this embodiment practice is important, because there are the sense of love and connectivity, as I said earlier, is this neuroception that's going on all the time. And so if we can begin to feel this love and connect it with our body and our breathing, then we have access to it. And yeah, so I hope that answered a little bit of help. But I mean, I think to me, this is the saddest part of the world, is that there's as the wars go on and the fears go on, it's just we're creating a world of people that are constantly in their sympathetic nervous system. But I also believe that the more that we can become present and embodied and loving and compassionate, because neuroception isn't limited, it actually is connected to all beings, that if we do this with this sense of I'm connecting to all beings and let that be a thought, then this energy of mind goes where our thoughts direct it. And so we actually do connect with all beings, and we do share this with everyone on the planet. And I didn't really believe this until the pandemic came and we started doing Zoom. And I started realizing, wow, I feel connected to this person in Australia. It's really real, you know, we do. And the Dalai Lama said a long time ago, he said, he thinks in his lifetime that scientists will prove the existence of the subtle mind. And we're getting closer and closer to it all the time with this EKGs and recognizing neuroception and neuroplasticity and all this stuff. I think you know, it's not very long before we realize that when we say, I'm doing this for all sentient beings, we really are. Yeah.
Thank you, Paula. Magda has commented, thank you. So I think you've answered her question.
Yeah.
And Lydia had a similar one. I think maybe you've covered it, but if you want, she says, for people who are not aware of themselves, what is one technique to learn to how to be aware, a simple technique they can practice every day?
I think what we just did.
Yeah, yeah. And Denise shared, Thich Nhat Hanh used to say, even if you have to be hurrying somewhere, fine, but think, I'm hurrying now, as you are walking. So thanks, Denise, for that.
Yeah.
Carla, you have your hand up. Could you ask your question, please?
Io volevo chiedere, quando si è in contatto con persone violente ogni giorno, viene voglia di fuggire, viene rabbia, cosa si può fare?
Yeah, I heard you and I understood you, but we need Ciliana to translate for everybody else. Yeah.
You're muted, Ciliana.
I can hear you.
Oh, do we have to be on the interpretation Italian one? I can't hear.
That's hard to say without knowing the whole context, you know. If they're really violent and angry, it's better to just get away from them. If you're in danger, you should not be around those people, you know. Otherwise, if it's not that dangerous, then the best thing to do, if you can possibly, like I said before, if you can try to understand what makes them violent and dangerous and have compassion for them, and then you're not quite as affected by their anger and their violence. But if it's something that you are in contact with every day, and if you can, separate yourself from it. But if you can't, like it's someone that you live with, then what can you do? Just a lot of self-care for yourself, I guess, you know, but and just, I mean, that's a really hard, it would take a long time, I think. I mean, I don't know, but I think it would take a long time to develop enough what do you say, holistic awareness of my own inner goodness to be able to withstand an onslaught of a violent person. So my feeling is, as best you can, get away from that situation. Yeah.
Thank you, Paula. Carla, is that okay?
Sorry. Grazie.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? May I ask one, Paula?
Yeah.
So you've spent so many years in isolation. You're one of the very few, you know, Westerners who've done that much solitude to the exclusion of friends and family and what many people believe is a kind of normal life. Was it worth it?
That's a really good question. I think so. I wouldn't, you know, I don't have a family. I don't have any kids. That was my, you know, I did that with my childbearing years. And I don't regret it at all. Because, I mean, I don't know if it'll be of much benefit to other people, but I do know that in my own self, what I was just sharing with you comes very easy to me. And I think it's because I, you know, did so much practice. And I'm not sure you have to do it in solitude like that. And I probably would say not, you know. But back then, this was presented to us as young people interested in Tibetan Buddhism that this was how you could attain enlightenment. And I was very, very impressed by the Tibetan yogis that I met, and they were not normal people. They were like, you wouldn't believe. You sit in a room with somebody like that, and everybody, I mean, Lama Yeshe is an example. Everybody feels okay. Everybody feels loved. Everybody feels special. Everybody's mind gets calm. You know, and if one person has the capacity to sit in a room with 100 people and they all feel that, then that's a very special person. And so I wanted to be like that. And I don't think I am like that. But I don't regret attempting that level of awareness and enlightenment that our teachers have. And I think that I was willing to be my own experiment. And because what else is there to do with my life, you know? And because if it were possible, wouldn't that be amazing to be the first enlightened Western woman? I mean, wow, that'd be amazing, you know? And I can't really say I met that goal. I mean, I was a very idealistic young person, you know, I was in my 20s. And, you know, you get to the point where, you know, you're in your 50s and now I'm in my 60s and think, well, didn't really make it, did I? But rather than like be down on myself or whatever, it's like, okay, well, that's as good as I got. I mean, I think what I've learned is you know, the other thing Lama Yeshe used to say was good enough, you know, well, you just do what you can and don't judge yourself, you know, I mean, what's another part I didn't say about this inner world that we have to create for ourselves is that, you know, comparing myself to anybody else is a total mistake. We're all very unique. We all have our own traumatic childhoods that we have to work through. We all have our own stuff. We all have our past lives we brought with us. And so we just do the best we can this life. And that's good enough. Because we have to, I mean, it's a balance between I'm good enough and I need to improve myself, you know. But we can't, if we don't accept ourselves as we are, we can't move forward because then we're frozen in these negative concepts about ourselves. So it's like we need to create a positive inner environment, knowing that I have a long way to go, but I'm happy. I mean, I have to be comfortable with who I am now, you know? So that's something I had to work on, you know? Does that answer your question?
Paula, I think, yes, it does indeed. And I think you have achieved much more than perhaps you think. I mean, Susie's comment in the chat, thank you so much. I haven't felt this refreshed in years. And Anna said, so much truth and wisdom learning in the dark and expressing things brings light and healing. You're in your own channel.
Oh, that's great. Well, I would say the thing about doing those practices by yourself for a long time is you digest them. I mean, the whole point of doing meditation retreats is to bring it from the intellect into the heart. And I would never trade that for anything, you know. And I mean, I'll just share with you. Do you remember Stefano Piovella?
Yes.
I'm sure some of you remember him. Celiana probably remembers him. Well, you know, he was the director of Tushita in 1982. And, you know, I had been given a fellowship to University of California, Berkeley, which is a big honor. I mean, it meant I had my way paid to get a PhD at Berkeley. And I took time out of that to come to India. And when I was in India, I got really inspired that, well, this is the science I want to study, and I can't do that at the university. So I was a huge decision. I mean, it took me a long time to make that decision. I was quite stressed. So I was going to quit that. And Stefano did a tarot reading for me. And he said, well, if you go to school, if you stay in school, you can become the King of Swords. But if you follow this other path, you're going to become the Queen of Hearts.
I think you've achieved that.
And I decided that, you know, Queen of Hearts sounds better to me than the King of Swords, because there's lots of King of Swords out there, you know. And I don't have the intellectual acumen of, you know, my contemporaries who are these great scholars. I don't have it at all. And I feel kind of inadequate. I'm just being honest with you. But I'm happy, you know, because I feel like the real job of our practice is to the word, here we go again, embody it, you know. So you can't do that with your brain, with your head. That has to be a body, like Helena said, you know, you feel love with your whole body. So you can't do that studying and being in your head, you know. At least I couldn't. I can't say over other people, you know.
Paula, there's a question from Carol, thanking you very much. How do you see the body-based techniques of, say, the 6 yogas of Naropa and Dzogchen to shift trauma and lack of self-grounding and love in practice?
I wouldn't say it's so great. It's too advanced for where we are. We need to start with stuff like I was talking about, you know, because until you're in your body, and until you've dealt with your trauma, those practices just become pathways for spiritual bypassing, which is what you see in most people that do those things. And so I really believe that you just have to start where you are, you know. And I have a friend, and I don't think I'm not going to say her name, but, you know, she worked all her life in service, helping sentient beings. And finally it came time to retire. She's like, yay, now I can finally do a retreat. I'm going to do my Dzogchen practice, my mom mudra practice. I'm going to do all this stuff I've been wanting to do. And when she quit working, she had so much anxiety, and she realized that she couldn't do any of that stuff. And you know what she's doing? I'm so proud of her. She's doing crossword puzzles and listening to teachings. Because when she does crossword puzzles, it's helping her mind to relax and deal with her anxiety. So it's like, that's great. And at a certain point in time, she'll move beyond that, and maybe, you know, working with her breath. And, you know, so I really think we need to start at someplace way more basic. We need to do yoga and come into our bodies, heal our trauma with Western psychology. And then maybe we can do something like Dzogchen and the 6 yogas of Naropa. And that might not even be this lifetime. But it doesn't mean we can't study it and work with it to put the imprints in our minds. But most people who do the 6 yogas of Naropa get really bad neurological disease. I mean, Mingyur Rinpoche won't even teach it.
Thank you, Paula. I just want to emphasize that Paula is doing all this work voluntarily. She does have a website, which I'll post now, Brave You. And if you want to hear Paula again, FDCW is hosting a webinar. There's a lot of crashing around, I don't know what it is, but hosting a webinar called Enjoy with Compassion on the 15th of December at 5 p.m. UK time. Details are on the FDCW website. So Paula is available to us then, which we thank very much. I'd just like to thank everybody involved, especially the translators. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your translation.
I just want to say one more thing, which is that I am in Zurich at the moment, and I'm on a teaching tour. And for the next month, I'll be teaching on different Zoom things. If anyone wants to come, you can find out at the website where that's happening. And mostly it's Chenrezig, compassion practice. So, but these will be Buddhist practices. So it's only if you're interested in that. But I also want to thank the translators, and it's nice to see you, and Angela. And you, Wendy. Wendy's been my old friend. I've known Wendy for 40 years, and she's a wonderful person.
Giving away our age, Paula.
Well, I think they can tell.
I'd like to also emphasize that FDCW is happy to host this summit, but we also need funds. So anybody who wants and is able to make a donation, that would be gratefully received. Victoria, any final comments before we close?
Just to say thank you so much, Paula, for that amazing wisdom. I've taken lots of notes, and I'm so inspired by what you've shared today. And it's totally vindicated my feeling to invite you to open this conference, because it's there. So thank you so much.
Have a good conference.
Thank you.
And hello to all my friends out there. And thank you all so much.
So relaxed. Thank you so much, Paula, and everyone. Open your mics, jazz hands. Thank you, Paula. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Paula, thank you, Wendy. Thank you, everyone. Brilliant.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.